All right, folks, how was that?
Excellent.
Exhilarating, eh?
Are there polar bears here?
Is there polar bears here?
Yeah.
No, unfortunately not. Not quite cold enough yet. Now, so what makes an ice field special? That ice field that's directly above us, the Columbia Ice Field, that is 168 square kilometers of glaciatic ice and or 80 miles of ice. Square miles of ice, sorry. Now, that's a substantial amount of ice and it feeds 6 glaciers out here. Now, that's a bit of an overachiever. So to get that classification, you actually need to feed only 2 glaciers from your ice field. So we have the beautiful Athabasca Glacier, the Dome Glacier, which is just to our right, the amazing Stutfield Glacier, which you've probably seen if you came from Jasper, the Saskatchewan Glacier, the Columbia Glacier, the Cascade Glacier. So we have 6 glaciers that come off from here. Now, all of these glaciers, as well as the ice field, go into 2 different national parks in 2 provinces. So they're this thing's absolutely massive. Now, what we're on right now is called the Ice Core Moraine. So that means all of you have officially gone onto a glacier as of this moment right now. Now, if you don't believe me, because we're driving on a bunch of dirt, if we look to our right, you'll see some blue ice protruding out, as well as to our left, you'll see that same ice. Now, if we look to our even further left, that mountainside is eroded away substantially. Now, many, many years ago, there was a pretty substantial landslide that came out here and pushed all this rock and rubble onto the glacier. That's kind of created a thermal insulation barrier, and it's about 1 meter of rock and rubble on top of the glacier. Now that is why we're so much higher than the valley to our right, where that glacier has evaporated and melted away substantially from the harmful sun rays that are out there. Now, the lovely ice that you can see that is all blue, is an indication of a process called fernification. Now, fernification happens where we take about 50 meters of snow and compact that down with a little bit of heat, and that makes about 10 centimeters thick of glaciatic ice. So it takes an immense amount of snow to come down and compress into 10 centimeters of ice. Now, that makes it incredibly dense. So dense, in fact, about 90% of the contents within are just purely water. So it is extremely, extremely dense out there. Now that makes it 90% water and 10% air. That's completely different from the ice that you get out of a lake or from your fridge here. Now, that is around 50% water, 50% air. So it is completely different. And because it's so dense, it creates crevasses all throughout the ice. Now, when there's a little hollow point, that makes an immense amount of pressure on the ice, and then it forces it to crack. And when it cracks, it creates a crevice, and those crevasses are anywhere from 20 meters deep to 100 meters deep. So they are substantially deep. Now, we're about to drive through a puddle here, folks. And this is not just an ordinary puddle, it is a fancy puddle. Now, this has a specific job here, and it's called a tire wash, and it washes our tires. I don't know if you can tell that by the name. Now, it's imperative that we wash our tires off before we get onto the ice road, so we don't have any dirt or debris tracked onto our ice. It attracts a lot of heat and makes it way, way hotter. Now, if we bring on dirt onto this glacier, it will do the exact same thing and make it so it melts a lot. We can continually drive on. Sure, around us has some darker patches as well as just it has a grayish hue to it. And that dark patch is what we call cryoconite. Cryokinite is a natural phenomenon here that forms on pretty much every single glacier all around the world. Now, it forms when soot and ash come together and combine and amalgamate into this slimy-like substance that stays on the glacier and goes within the ice. Now, it's extremely hard to get rid of this, therefore, don't. It does degenerate our glacier a fair bit, but we're not actually that bad out here. There's some glaciers out in Europe and Switzerland that are almost completely black, full of that cryokinite. As well as that, we had a significant forest fire many, many years ago that deposited a substantial amount of forest fire ash amongst the glacier. That's why it has that grayish tinge, as well as a process from these katabatic winds that come out here that also deposit a substantial amount of dirt and debris out here. That makes it nice and gray. Now, like I said, there's the guided tours that are out and about. Now, we will not be replicating that and walking out to the middle of the glacier. Now, unfortunately, I'm not a mountain guide as much as I would like to be. I am not qualified to be taking you guys outside the area boundary. So we have a boundary up here. It's full of red signs as well as some red ropes. Now, that is your area which you can stay in. Now, do not exit that because we do not know the dangers outside. We get a scientist out here every single year to inspect this patch of ice to make sure that it is completely safe for folks just like you to enjoy on your travels out here. Now, you'll notice when you're out and about that there's different colors of ice. Now, the blue ice is actually incredibly slippery, so just be cautious of that. The white ice is far more grippy out there, so you're far more stable walking on that white ice.